On Primetime Politics tonight, the federal government unveils new gun control legislation that includes a buyback of assault-style weapons banned last spring. But the program will be voluntary. How will that make communities safer? I'll speak with the Minister of Justice about the new measures. This week marks the beginning of a major ramp-up in vaccine supply for Canada, and that underscores Canada's dependence on foreign vaccines. Tonight, we'll hear from one Canadian company on the push for a made-in-Canada solution. And our panel of parliamentary journalists will be here to discuss the key stories of the day. We'll begin tonight with new gun control legislation, Bill C-21, unveiled today by the federal government. After announcing a ban last May on some 1,500 models and variants of assault-style weapons, today's legislation proposes to buy the banned weapons back at a fair market price. But owners could also keep the weapons if they meet certain strict conditions. Those include not using the guns, selling them, transporting them, transferring or bequeathing them. The government says the voluntary buyback program would cost an estimated $300 to $400 million. Other measures include red flag laws to allow for the immediate removal of someone's firearms if they present a threat, and allowing municipalities to ban handguns.
We also need to ensure that anyone who chooses to keep those weapons needs to store them securely, needs to inform us fully about all the details on those weapons and demonstrate secure storage for it while not using it. These are the things that we have determined is the best path forward to keep Canadians safe, to get as many of these weapons out of circulation in this country as possible, and to ensure people are safe moving forward.
I think Mr. Trudeau misleads people when he tries to suggest that buying things back from hunters and other Canadians who are law-abiding is somehow going to solve the problem of shooting and criminal gang activity in the big cities. It's ignoring the real problem, and it's dividing Canadians.
My main concern is that this might prove to be an electoral statement by the government, which doesn't want to displease anybody, and will make this law or the part of it about the buyback policy not mandatory, which makes the position, the law, under many regards, useless.
Canada's Minister of Justice, David Lametti, was at the news conference today on the new gun control measures. He joins me now. Minister, good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Pleased to be here.
Look, why has your government decided that a voluntary buyback program for assault-style weapons is the way to go in this country instead of implementing a mandatory buyback program, which a lot of people had been calling for?
Well, look, first of all, this really does complete what we did in May in banning military-style assault weapons. What we're doing here, it's not a voluntary buyback in the sense that other people think about voluntary buybacks. What we learned from the Australian and the New Zealand experience was that they really needed to get more information about the guns out there. And this is the message that we got. So while they did have a so-called mandatory buyback, they ended up getting about 50,000 weapons returned, and they think there's probably another 100,000 out there in the New Zealand case. What we're doing is we are creating an incentive scheme and mandating that people have to now register these weapons. They will be subject to strict regulation in terms of storage. They'll have to report to us on that storage, pay a fee. And then when we have that information, what we have in addition is a buyback incentive, because they won't be able to use the weapon for anything. They're prohibited from using the weapon for any purpose. They can't shoot it. They can't transport it. They can't sell it. They can't give it away.
Right.
So they can look at it, and that's it. And so we think that given this whole package together, there's a great deal of incentive for people to turn their gun in for a fair market price.
What's the cash incentive? What's the fair market price?
Well, it has yet to be established. I know Minister Blair mentioned a figure today, but we have to look at the market more carefully.
I think he said $1,300, but that was still being discussed.
That's right.
Okay, and so how will that be determined? I mean, I've heard gun owners say these things are anywhere from that kind of price to up to $2,000, $2,500. So how will you decide what's a fair market price?
Well, that's something that Minister Blair's team and the whole team at Public Security is going to have to look at over time, and they'll do that. Those are next steps. But for the time being, the important part of it is getting the regulatory picture in place, in the sense that we need to get these guns weren't registered before. So as with other countries, there wasn't an idea of what was out there. We're going to get a better picture of what's out there. We're going to force people to register. And we're going to have these weapons safely stored. They won't be able to be used for anything else. So I think that's a good start, and then we'll work on the buyback program as we
right. But how? Like the whole idea of this crackdown is to make communities safer. So I guess how is the threat to others minimized if a person is still allowed to keep the banned assault-style weapon? If that person wants to commit a mass shooting, what's in this bill to stop them from using that weapon?
Well, we also have the extreme risk provisions, so the so-called red flag and yellow flag laws. What we've done, where there is a fear that a person, let's say the guns are in the hands of the wrong person for whatever reason, anybody with knowledge of that can go to a justice of the peace, get a court order, and those guns can be seized immediately. And that's something that community knowledge is there. It's not just the potential victims, but anybody else who may know about the existence of these weapons can go to a peace officer. And these red flag laws, which a number of experts think are critically important to this, and where the Biden administration is actually going. All of these are, I think, very strong measures. There are also yellow flag laws, which are slightly less serious, but would involve a lapse and a suspension of the registration of the weapon. So all of these help others around the gun, if you will, to be able to flag when it's not being used properly.
I guess it occurs to me that allowing gun owners to hang on to these weapons does raise the potential, I suppose, of a future government reversing the ban. Maybe gun owners will think that might happen. They'll just hang on to them in the hopes that the future government will reverse the ban. What's the potential of that?
Well, we're enshrining this in law, and so it would require a legal change. Let me underscore that the majority of Canadians, vast majority of Canadians, are law-abiding citizens. The vast majority of gun owners in Canada are law-abiding citizens who use their guns for hunting and for sport. And we're not touching those guns. And we're trusting that other people who own what are these now prohibited weapons will want to remain on the right side of the law, and will do what the law is asking them to do, and they'll continue to be legal. Okay,
a couple of quick questions to finish up here on this, and I want to quickly ask you about assisted dying as well. But there are also provisions in this bill that would allow municipalities to ban handguns, backed up with penalties. And why is your government going that route instead of introducing a national handgun ban and avoiding a possible patchwork of rules across the country?
Well, I think this represents the reality of Canada, and that the ways in which guns are used are different in certain parts of the country than in others. So it allows municipalities where there is a belief, a very strong belief, and I share it as an urban Montrealer, that handguns have no place in our cities. So it allows those cities to move forward. Obviously, we have to respect the fact that cities are creatures of the provinces, and their bylaw power comes from the provinces, and so they'll have to work with the provinces, and so will we, in order to affect these kinds of bans.
Okay, let me ask you about your bill on assisted dying.